Although once we are familiar with an application, we can more easily translate between what we may read or hear and what our screen actually shows. When we are first learning, having things even being slightly inconsistent can be confusing and make us feel like we're lost. I certainly understand it, and I also certainly do not want that for you. But in order to get this new features course ready, so you didn't have to wait and experience any downtime between getting Office 2010 and having training related to it, this course was actually written and recorded using the beta before the retail release of Office 2010 was available. We worked very hard to research and ensure that what we showed you in the course was going to continue to be accurate in the full release of the software. For the most part, I think we did a pretty good job. We are aware of one specific discrepancy, though. In this course, I often refer to and show part of the backstage view that is called Share. In the full release, the name of this option was actually changed and is called Save and Send. There may be some other minor discrepancies. I haven't seen them yet, but they could be there. But I just wanted to let you know that this is why you may be seeing something on your screen during the course that's a little bit different than what you actually experience with your own software. But most importantly, I wanted to assure you that the functionality and techniques that you're shown are going to be exactly the same. It's just a little visual alteration that Microsoft made between when we had to record and they finalized the software itself. We certainly do appreciate your understanding. Now I hope that you'll sit back, relax, and enjoy learning all of the new features in Office 2010. The good news is that you've probably already weathered the biggest challenge, and that's the move from the older toolbar and menu interface to the new Fluent interface, including the ribbon that was introduced back in Office 2007. If you've chosen to take a look at the new features in 2010 before you've experienced 2007, you might have a few, well, we'll just call them holes as far as your knowledge foundation goes, mostly just terminology and where things are at, but that's okay. You can still take this course and get value from seeing what 2010 has to offer. In Office 2010, it's not such a drastic change because we're already familiar with the radical interface. But like a new car model year, there are still changes and enhancements that you should know about. Some are going to be obvious, kind of like a change to the exterior of the car's shape or maybe a dashboard control that's in a different place. Others are going to be more subtle, like enhancements to performance or safety features. We want to get started by identifying what about the Fluent interface is new or improved in 2010. In order to do this, I've gone ahead and opened a file. It's in your Chapter 1 folder of your Project Files folder that's probably on your desktop, and it's called Training Proposal. We aren't necessarily going to work too much with the contents of this document, but I wanted to be sure that all of our controls were active. In order to do that, we need to have a file that's open, and it also helps to have a file with some content. So this is the file that we'll have open and be using as we work through the lessons in this particular chapter. As we begin to look around, we can see that this is very familiar, at least if you've used Office 2007. We have the ribbon at the top, we have the status bar at the bottom, things are pretty good. People often wonder why there was such a big change between the 2003 and prior versions of Office and 2007 when they introduced the Fluent interface. Well, there's a long version, but also a short version, and the short version is that toolbars and menus simply outlived their usefulness. And in order to accommodate the numerous features available in today's applications, a redesign was critical. So in 2010, we still have the Fluent interface. You'll notice that some things are very similar, and I'm actually going to start kind of backwards for most of us. Most of us start from the top left and work to the bottom right. I'm going to work the other way. So we'll notice on the bottom right, we still have our zoom controls. We can drag the slider. We also can click the plus and minus signs. And we can actually click the percentage to bring up a window that allows us to do presets, if you will. For example, I might want to look at the whole page. We still have our page views. And as you can see, we also get tooltips. So if you're not familiar with any of these, you get a little bit of help. On the left-hand side, we can also see that we have some basic information. What you see here might be slightly different than what I'm showing. I'm using a default installation of Office 2010 right out of the box, and yours might be customized. But my status bar is showing the number of pages, the current page I'm on, how many words are in the document, and it also has an indicator for spell check. But again, in 2007, they gave us the new ability to update or customize the status bar. By right-clicking, we can see all of the different things that we can show, and we can simply designate to turn them on or off. For example, I do like page numbers. I might come down and say, yes, I do like to know the word count. Maybe I do some marketing where I have to do things that have 100 words or so. Or maybe I'm a student and need to write a 500-word essay. One of the things I may not care about are the number of authors editing, and you'll see that this is actually a new feature in 2010 that has to do with co-authoring that we'll talk about in a later chapter. If I didn't need something in particular, like language, I would just turn it off. You will also see that when something is enabled, like signatures, on the right-hand side, it might also tell you that even though signatures will show up in the status bar, currently for this document they're turned off. So there could be two things you need to take a look at, especially if you're trying to troubleshoot why some information is not showing in the taskbar. I'm just going to make that one change. I'm going to click back on my document to get rid of the menu and just remind you that the status bar in general is exactly the same as it was in Office 2007, except it does have some added features that are new in 2010. Except it does give some added options about things that are new in 2010. As I already mentioned, the most noticeable change in 2007 was the replacement of menus and toolbars with the ribbon. Well, the ribbon is back and almost exactly the same. I want to go over just a little bit of terminology because even for those who have used 2007, if they didn't have good training, they may not know the terminology, and the terminology can be important. So on the ribbon, we start off by talking about tabs, the Home tab, the Insert tab, the Page Layout tab, and so forth. If I go to the Home tab, I then can use things called groups. So the Home tab has the clipboard group, the font group, the paragraph group, and so forth. And then within a group, we have an option. So what you might hear somebody tell you, or an instruction that you might get, is something like, go to the Home tab in the clipboard group and select the Format Painter option. So far, so good? All right. I don't really care too much if you know all the terminology, but you will hear it and read it, and so it's good to be at least familiar with it. As you can see, when we pause over things, we still get tooltips, and they're actually expanded over what we saw in the past. It tells us the name, in this case Format Painter, as well as giving us the keyboard shortcut, Control-Shift-C. If I move over that again to bring it back up, we also see that it actually gives us an explanation, copy formatting from one place and apply it to another. So this again can be really helpful if you're not familiar with all of the tools. Well, there are a couple of other things that we need to know about the ribbon in addition to tabs and groups and options. The first is something called a dialog box launcher. If I look at the font group, I can see that my most commonly used font features are here, but not all of them. The reason we had to change from menus and toolbars to the ribbon was because there simply wasn't enough room to show all of the options that we had anymore. Well, the same is true in the ribbon. If I want to see something that's not the basics, like making something bold, changing the font, or changing the size, I can go to the lower right corner, and there's this little area, if you pause over it, called the Dialog Box Launcher, and I can click on it to bring up, you guessed it, a dialog box. For most of you, this will be familiar. These are the same boxes in this case that you saw when you went to Format Font in the older applications. And here we have access to things that we don't necessarily see on the ribbon, like applying a double strike through or an emboss effect. So if you're looking for something and you can't find it, here's kind of your troubleshooting. First, make sure you're on the right tab. Then make sure you're looking for the right group and option. And if you still don't see it, look for a dialog box launcher that may show you additional options. None of that is actually new with 2010. It's just a review from 2007. But something that is new is over on the right-hand side. We have two buttons. This one actually lets me shrink down the ribbon or collapse the ribbon. So if I don't like taking up that space, I can with one click simply get rid of it and bring it back. Also, this isn't new, is the help button. It kind of amazes me how many people I've heard that say, I can't find help. They're used to that big box that said ask a question. To them it was really obvious. And even though this is a question mark, people for some reason just overlook it. So yes, you do still have help in these versions of Office. It's just the small circular button with the question mark on it near the right-hand side of the ribbon and the screen. The other thing that's similar at the top of the screen is going to be your quick access bar. Now the quick access bar gives us access to things that we need quickly, therefore the name. Actually, the purpose here is that if you happen to be moving around between different tabs, for example, if I'm on the References tab, I currently don't have access to some of the things that I want to do most often, which are going to be found on the Home tab. So instead, we can place those things up here, and these always appear regardless of what tab we're currently on. The default is for it to have a save, an undo, and a redo. But this is customizable, and we can click on the drop-down, and we can quickly add things, for example, like an ability to do a quick print or a print preview. I'll just go ahead and give Quick Print a click, and now you can see that I always have the option to print right from here. A lot of people complained, though, that if you add too many buttons in 2007, that this bar got so big that it began to interfere with the file name. See, as this thing would grow across, it would actually cover over the name of the file. People didn't like that. The problem, of course, was that what they were trying to do is to reconstruct their custom toolbars by simply using the quick access bar to do that. And that's really not exactly what it was intended to do. You did have the option, of course, of putting this bar below the ribbon, which solved that problem. Then it could extend all the way across the screen. But I have good news for you. In 2010, they've added something that was really highly requested after the release of 2007. And that highly requested feature is the topic for Lesson 2.